Hi everybody, I'm Tim from troutandfeather.com, and I know if you're anything like me, you are always on the lookout for a quick tie and a fly that catches a lot of fish. Look no further. I'm going to introduce to you the Hotspot Pheasant Tail Nymph, and it has a ton of variations. Plus, if you stick around after the tying, we're going to talk a little bit more about that hot orange fluorescent bead that you're seeing. Stay tuned. Let's start tying this Hotspot Pheasant Tail. In my vise, which is a Stonfo transformer, I have a Honic competition hook. It's the H450BL. That BL designation stands for barbless. I'm tying this in a size 16. This is a pattern I fish between sizes 14 down to a 20. 16 seems to be a standard one. The orange bead, gosh, we are going to talk a little bit more about that orange bead later, but there is just something that's just really awesome about this kind of like a matte fluorescent orange bead. The one that's in this vise right now, or on my hook, is a slotted tungsten bead. It's a 2.5 millimeter, so it's kind of paired with this hook. You can go one size larger, maybe to a 3 if you're really just trying to bump up the weight. I'm going to be using some Semperfli wax thread. It is 12/aught for the size, and the color, it's one of my favorites. It's called brown olive. So what I do is just kind of build up a nice little thread dam behind this bead, just to get everything kind of locked in place. I don't want to make it too built up there, or else I'm going to have a lot of stuff going on at the head. So once there's a ramp that gets formed, you can just slowly let your thread depress down that ramp. I'll break off my tag, and now let's move on to our tailing materials. For tailing fibers, we're going to go with something easy. This is called Coque de Leon, sometimes abbreviated CDL. It's a really easy material to tie with. Recently, especially over the last couple seasons, it's been getting tougher and tougher to find quality CDL. Now, my favorite color is medium Pardo, so that's what I would recommend you look for, at least to start off. For the number of fibers, I'm going to recommend somewhere between 4 to 6 fibers. Will I count? If I have more than 6, I will try to remove a couple, but that tends to be the number that I'm going for. Now, to measure this, I have to decide, I'm going to make it approximately the same length as the body. But the question is, what's the body? Is it from the end of the bead to the bend? Is it from the eye to the end of the bend? Truly, that's suggestive, and in my mind, that's really up to you. But I would recommend whatever you do, I would kind of maintain that consistency throughout all the patterns in your box. So I'm just going to line this up. I'm going to make it somewhere around there. Let's put a few. I got some relatively loose wraps just to kind of lock it in place. So at this point, I can make a decision. If it's just a little too long, I can pull on the butt ends, shorten it. If it's a little too short, I can pull on the tips and lengthen it. In my mind, I think it's okay. Maybe I'll just shorten it just a touch, and that's about it. Now I'm going to grab onto the fibers with my left pointer finger and thumb, just kind of pull them slightly my way, because as I take my thread and as it goes around the shank, it's kind of twisting those fibers back towards the center. So I'm just kind of helping them stay centered as they go down. Now, the one thing, I've seen a couple other tyers do this over the years, and I have started doing it on a lot of my Euro nymphs as well, is that you take these fibers, kind of pull them upwards, put a thread wrap underneath. So you kind of cock them upwards at a little bit of an angle. Now, I know what you're going to say. Somebody's going to comment and say, Tim, you're doing that, but you're tying this on a jig hook with a slotted tungsten bead. This is going to ride upside down, hook point up. Isn't that going to defeat the purpose? And my answer to you is maybe. But I don't know, there's just something about making it different, not keeping it perfectly straight. If you've watched my previous videos, you saw my tailing fibers. I always wanted them coming straight down that shank. Yet here I am putting them up at a little angle. Is it going to make a difference in the water? I don't know. But I do know that most people, most tyers, have theirs going straight out. So I want mine to be just a little bit different. So think about that. I'm always looking for that edge, just to make it a little bit different. All right, next, let's get to our ribbing. So for our ribbing material, in my mind, there's really only one material that I love to use on this, and it is this Semperfli wire. The size, if you're able to see that, is 0.1 millimeter. Now the color is copper. That is my favorite color to use, and then my second favorite color, same stuff, but it's brown. There is just something that's really nice about this fine wire. It is so minuscule. It's some of the finest wire that I've ever tied with. It's really easy to use, really easy to manipulate, and it provides a nice level of protection and a little bit of shine into your pattern. So I'm just going to get it started. bring my thread back down towards my bead ramp. And at this point, I can just let it rest there while I grab kind of my main material. I think you guys all know what this is. It's pheasant tail. I mean, this is the natural, easily one of my favorite materials to use. Now, we're going to talk later about why I didn't also use this material for the tailing fibers. But for now, we're going to use it as a body material. I'm going to tie it in by the tips. The first thing I'm going to do is just kind of trim the tips just a little bit. I mean, this is a fragile material. So I'm just going to trim them a hair, do a little pinch wrap, pull them down so they're locked in place. So I'm not sure if you were able to see that little trick that I did. So I locked them in place with a gentle wrap, but the tips were extending past the bead. But it was a gentle wrap, so I was able to pull on the butt fibers. So now the tips are locked right behind the bead. What that did, it saved me a step. I didn't have to grab my scissors. By the way, this is a pair of Renown scissors. I love these. I didn't have to grab my pair of scissors and trim away the tips. It saved me a step. Now, I'm talking to you, but that's okay. I at least want you to be aware that anytime you can save steps while you're tying, go for it. I'm just going to wind back, lock my pheasant tail fibers in place, and I had pulled around 3 or 4 fibers. Once I get down to my tail, make sure it's still cocked upwards a little bit. It is. So I'm just going to bring my thread back forward. If you would like to, at this point, make we'll say more of a carrot taper, by all means you can. If you use hackle pliers, this would be a good point to grab onto your pheasant tail. I have a pair of Stonefo Elite hackle pliers that I love to use. I'm just going to advance my pheasant tail fibers forward. And you can see as they advance, gosh, all those little fibers are just popping up. It just gives such a proof of life. There's a reason this fly has lived on for so many years, or just pheasant tail in general. So I'm going to get really close to that bead. Once I get it up there, I'm just going to hold the fiber straight up in my right hand, make a couple locking wraps with my left hand. Then I'm not going to release them from my grip yet. I'm just going to place a couple wraps in front of them. Then I can come in, let's get that from swinging, really tight with my scissors, and just trim them away. Next, let's advance our wire. So it's just kind of been hanging out here, waiting around. I'm going to counter rib with my wire. So this is going to offer just a little bit of a glimpse of something, but it's also going to provide some protection to that pheasant tail. So I'm going to try my best to keep this evenly spaced. Once I get it up to the bead, I'm just going to make an extra wrap. Put a wrap in front of it, 2 behind it, 1 more in front. Now, with my last wrap, I'm going to put it over. I'm going to pull down. You can see the hook kind of flexing. After I pull down, I'm going to take my wire. Instead of helicoptering it away, I'm just going to simply tear it away. Now I can save it for the next pattern. This Semperfli wire, it just tears so easily. It's just great. All right, then finally, our last material is going to be some dubbing at the thorax. Sure, you can go with natural peacock. I mean, I love peacock curl. However, my 2 favorite dubbings that are kind of a peacock style of dubbing. One is from Semperfli. Let's see if you can read that. It's called Ice Dubbing. The color is copper. I love this color. It's got kind of it's got some really nice shades of green in it. And then since I used a copper color wire, I like to pair that with a copper bronze peacock dubbing fine. So this is a peacock bronze. I shouldn't say copper bronze. This is from Simon Dubbing. It's got a few more brown shades. So it's, in my mind, it's just up to, am I going to make it more of a brown fly or more of a green fly? It's truly up to you. Now, I can tell you there are some differences in dubbings. So for instance, if I think I'm going to be fishing this fly in a lake as well, and I want to use a brush and kind of use that Velcro on the end of the brush to brush it out and to make it a little bit stragglier, then I'm going to go with this Simon dubbing. It's a little bit easier to brush out. The Semperfli dubbing, it's almost like, it almost feels like there's metal in it or something, because it just kind of binds to my thread. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This one's not as easy to brush out. When I pull it out of the package, you'll notice the strands are super long. Like, you're going to say, like, gosh, why are they so long? But watch what happens as I start to create a dubbing noodle. It just like instantly tightens. And it's now like perfectly straight up and down my thread. That's what I really love about this dubbing. I mean, it's super cool. A few of my friends saw that I was using it and they were like immediately over at my house begging for some of this stuff. It's really cool stuff. So now just wind, and I probably put a little bit too much on there because I only want to get around 3 turns, something like that. So you can see I got too much on there. So let me back some of this stuff up. Sorry, I got excited showing this to all of you. Who gets excited over dubbing? All right, there we go. So I have it in there. That's really all there is to this fly. I don't have any super glue close by, but I would take brushable super glue at this point, put it on my thread just to help to lock it in place, and go right into around a 4 to 6 turn whip finish. I'll start with 4. Make sure all is good. Get a couple more in there. That would be now resting on top of that super glue. Everything would be locked in place. It is still locked in place. I'm going to fish this one. Trust me, it will be fine. Now what's nice about this Semperfli dubbing, it's not too straggly, so whenever I pick it out, I don't have too many spots where I have to make cuts to kind of get rid of some excess. I don't know about you, but I just love that clean look once I finish the fly. So in this case, this one, I'd be fishing this in mainly rivers, streams, moving water. It's a little bit tougher to brush out that dubbing, but it's by all means a go-to pattern for me. And then I do want you to see what this Salmon Peacock Bronze looks like on the fly. So here is one with that. And you can see it's just a little straggler. I mean, you can probably just tell right now. Let me look around and see if I have a dubbing brush. I don't close by, but if I did, I would be able to use that Velcro on it, just brush it out, and you can see that stuff, it just really starts to pop out. It looks great in slower moving water, especially still water situations, lakes that have trout in them and other species. It just gives a little bit more movement to the fly. So that's the time behind this hot spot pheasant tail. I'll give you a quick 360 of this one. Let me go back to the original. I'll give you a quick 360 of that one. There you go. Now let's change the camera angle and talk a little bit more about these patterns. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that orange bead too. I told you this was simple, right? All right, now let's break this fly down a little bit and talk about it both from a fly tying and fly fishing perspective. First with the former. Let's go through all of the components of this and we'll just talk about variations and why I selected those that you're seeing. And we'll start with the jig hook. Now, whenever it comes to jig hooks, I absolutely love them because when they're paired with a slotted tungsten bead, they tend to invert and ride kind of upside down in the water, hook point up. Because of that, they are less likely to snag, and geez, fish just are drawn to them. I prefer Honic jig hooks, though there are other great ones out there. Next is we can kind of continue on. We're talking about the tail. I mean, I'm using Coq de Leon, which it can be tough to find sometimes. But the reason I choose CDL over pheasant tail is really simple. Pheasant tail fibers tend to tear. And once they've torn off a fly, I tend to lose confidence in that fly. Now, continuing on, I mean, think about that really slender wire that I used for the ribbing. That 0.1 millimeter from Semperfli. That stuff is just so awesome. You can barely see it if you don't want to, but it will add a little bit of weight and some durability. There are lots of great colors out there. I mean, you choose whichever ones you want. Go crazy with that. Next, we're talking about the body. I mean, pheasant tail. Can you go any easier than that? There are also some dyed variations, some dyed colors out there. I don't know about you though. I love the classic. There's just something about natural pheasant tail. It has those little fibers in there, and when they get wet, they just have a little bit of movement and breathability in the water. I mean, use pheasant tail with confidence. Next, as we continue on, I mean, I'm gonna think about the Thorax. Now, I use dubbing, basically my favorite, we'll say peacock colored dubbing. I like some that has a little bit of flash to it. Can you use traditional peacock curl too? Without a doubt, go for it. The reason I like to use peacock dubbing is there are times where I'll take a dubbing brush and I'll brush it out a little bit just to kind of give it the appearance of legs or a wing or just that straggly appearance that gives it just a little bit more movement. But without a doubt, choose a color that you want, and you can even kind of think about using a hotspot color too. However, you can see the hotspot color that I chose for that bead, hot orange. Now, where did that color come from? Because I wasn't just sitting at my bench one day and I said, I'm gonna start using orange on a regular basis. So a couple seasons ago, there was a new film released by Devin Olson. He's a member of Fly Fishing Team USA, and the video that he and Lance Egan released is called Adaptive Fly Fishing. Now, I watched that video, and it brought me so many great lessons, and I highly encourage you to check it out. There's a link down below if you're interested in doing so. Definitely do it. You'll learn so much. But now, during that video, I noticed that Devin was kind of always using this video or this pheasant tail that featured a orange color. And I thought, geez, if it's good enough for Devin, it's good enough for me. And trust me, fish love it too. Speaking of fishing with this pattern, I like to fish this in all water types, including lakes. Whenever I'm fishing it on a leader with 2 flies, if I use it with a larger size, we're talking a 12 to a size 14, maybe a 16, it will be the point fly. Otherwise, in smaller sizes, it's the dropper fly. Though I really love to fish this as a single fly on a leader. Now, whenever I think about fly fishing it, what locations on moving water? I mean, basically, you pick them because I use this on spring creeks, tailwaters, limestones, freestones. It doesn't matter. Fish seem to like it. Where in the water do I use it? Well, basically all over. I love it in riffles. I love it in pocket waters. I love it the heads of pools, and I love it in the tails of pools. Whenever I'm fly fishing with this in still water situations, going back to what I mentioned about kind of brushing out the thorax, I like to brush out the thorax a little bit. I like to cast it out, count down. So I basically like to let it sink while I sit there and wait. And once it gets to the depth where I want it, I start with a very slow retrieve. Otherwise, when I'm fly fishing with this in moving water, I like to fish with it basically on a dead drift. Whenever I say I like it, it's not necessarily what I like, it's what the fish tend to prefer. Now, when fly fishing in moving waters, we're talking streams and rivers, with these types of flies, my go-to method is European nymphing. I mean, it just is so effective. I have a number of videos out there related to it, and I'll put links down below. But then whenever I kind of think about the notion of European nymphing, let me just break it down for you. We're using these long, flexible fly rods that help to absorb just basically any kind of a shock. So you can get away with using really fine tippets with them. With the line, it's very fine diameter, basically a level fly line. It really is just kind of there. Whenever I think about the leader, gosh, there are so many different leaders out there. It's almost like a mad science. Basically, go as fine as you feel comfortable going and go as fine as you're able to cast. The tippet, gosh, there's a range of tippets that I use, but they tend to be on the smaller diameter size. We're talking 5X to even 8X. 6X basically seems to be about that area where I live. And then European nymphing, it goes down to these slotted tungsten beads on jig hooks. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, they tend to ride hook point up, inverted in the water, so they're less likely to snag, and you get better drifts. So you put that system all together, and gosh, fish just seem to just almost jump and slam these patterns. Now, I love to fish this fly and so many others with this system, and if you have any specific questions about it, please shoot me an email at tcammisa@gmail.com. And I also listed some of my favorite rods, lines, reels, and all of that fun stuff related to European nymphing down below because I get so many questions about basically what gear do I like to use. So now it's available for you too. That's all there is to the hotspot pheasant tail nymph. I mean, easy tie, it catches fish. Plus, if you want to vary it, you can basically think of any variation you'd like, substitute the colors, substitute some of the materials, have fun with this pattern. But whatever you do not substitute out that hot orange bead. Devin will be so mad at all of us. But seriously, I'd love to hear your thoughts and your comments down below in the comments section. Let me know what you think. When do you like to fish these patterns? What water types? What colors are you going to try out immediately? Let me hear your thoughts down there. And thank you so much for watching this video. If you'd like to watch more, you can check out my website, which is troutandfeather.com. Also available, especially to those of you who are new to the world of fly tying, or for those of you who are just interested in learning more patterns and techniques, I have a brand new book out. It's called Fly Tying for Everyone, and there are a number of European nymphs featured in that book. There's a link to purchase it down below. If you have any comments or questions, you can email me. There should be a link on the screen right now. It's tcammisa@gmail.com. If you're into the world of social media, who isn't these days? You can find Trout and Feather on Facebook. You can find Instagram, Twitter, and now I'm even making these really funny videos, at least I think they're funny, on TikTok. All of my social media accounts are listed down below in the description of this video. Once again, thank you everyone for watching this one. I hope you catch lots of fish on this pattern, and I'll see all of you soon.